I'm Patrick Stoner. I'm merely here to introduce and chat with David Oyelowo. David, it's good to see you. I've interviewed you for years, covered things besides that. I've got to say, this particular part is quite different from many of the ones that I saw you in over the years. I think Stanislavski would have described the character as a badass.
Thank you for calling me a badass. Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here on a Saturday. I really appreciate that, by the way. But yes, that's partly why I wanted to do it. You know, as an actor, you're looking for things that are not only going to challenge you, but feel very different to you. And as you can tell from my funny accent, this is quite a different guy than me. I play in the show.
Yeah, he was born in Oxford, England. Yes, this is your hard-nosed guy bass, and he's of course done a number of roles. You're probably familiar with his work. But one of the things that I'd like to start with is, this is of course based on a very real character. And you also, of course, are part of the producing of this as well. So talk, if you will, about the real man for a moment.
Yeah, I grew up in the UK, in England, and as a kid I loved Westerns. I wanted to be a cowboy as a kid, but didn't see anyone who looked like Bass in movies, in TV shows, and I just kind of accepted that as, okay, maybe that's just the reality of things. And it wasn't until 2014 that I was approached with the idea of doing a project around the character of Bass Reeves, and I simply couldn't believe that there hadn't been a major movie, a major TV show. I wasn't dressed up as him at Halloween. Like, how on earth had Hollywood, had the entertainment industry missed the opportunity to tell this story? When you read about him, it almost writes itself. I mean, so much of what you saw there in this first episode actually happened. And so for me, that's where the obsession began, of wanting to tell this story. And you know, I did a film called Selma, playing Dr. King as well, and thank you very much. But had a similar challenge with that, in terms of when that first came into my world. I similarly wondered, is this going to be the first time we're going to center a film about Dr. Martin Luther King in the 50 years since he was assassinated? I didn't understand that. But similarly here, I couldn't understand it, but we went out with it in 2015 after it had been brought to me, and we took it to every single studio, and the resounding statement was, we are not going to do this because no one is making Westerns. And then 2 years later, in 2017, we went out again to all the same players, and they said, we're not going to do this because everyone's doing Westerns. And I thought, this is clearly something else is going on here. And you know, I think the definition is clearly racism. And so for me, it was just unacceptable. And so that's why for 8 years till now, when we got it made, I just refused to give up.
Well, as we were talking earlier before we came out here, that's the power once you become successful, which he certainly has as an actor, and develop a certain amount of power, he can push it forward. For years, nobody except maybe Sidney Poitier had that kind of power. Things are changing, but not all that quickly. Okay, talk, if you will, about how it began. You wanted to do it with any kind of artistic license at all in terms of the story?
You always have to have artistic license, especially with the Western. There are a lot of books that chart what actually happened historically, but also with the Western, there's a lot of make-believe. It's a genre that is steeped in legend. One of the legends was that Bass Reeves was someone who spat on a brick once and it split in two. So we decided not to put that in the show. So I would describe this as historical fiction. You take, there are so many things that, like I say, you saw today. He was enslaved. He did escape slavery and lived with the Native Americans for a time, which is where he accrued the skills he then used as a deputy U.S. Marshal. He did beat his enslaver almost to death. He did go on to do things you would see if you watch some of the other episodes. George Reeves was his enslaver in the way that you see in this show. So we take those key elements, and then of course you have to fill in the lines around that.
Trying to get into the mindset of somebody who has not only was a slave, but that was the way it had been for so long. It was just accepted as that's the way it is. Now here you are, Oxford born, have an OBE. Let's face it, your life has certainly been quite different from that. What did you do to get into the mindset of somebody whose life experience was that?
Well, that's the thing that I have found so rewarding about playing people like Dr. King or Bass Reeves. Like you say, my experience is quite different. But when you start to look at folks like Dr. King, who suffered incredible amounts of racism, was fighting for injustice, someone like Bass Reeves, who dealt with enslavement, being brutalized, knowing that there were generations of that. The notion is that they are quite different. They're actually not. In my experience of reading and studying them, that self-possession, that dignity. I come from a royal family in Nigeria, and there is a certain thing that comes with knowing who you are, and these men knew who they were, despite all of that subjugation.
Roots.
It's almost there is no way, in my opinion, you can go on to have the self-possession that Bass Reeves had in spite of how ill-treated he was and his ancestors were, without there being something of the divine in you. And that is something that fueled Bass Reeves. He was someone who believed in justice. He believed in God. He believed that he was more than what he was being subjected to. And that's the only reason he could go on to be transcendent despite all of those things. And I gravitate towards those kind of characters because you can feel it. There is a reason why they end up being great. It's because the circumstances that are around them do not dictate to them who they are. And I truly believe that is a huge part of the African American experience in this country. There is no way that black people in this country could have survived, contributed, be as transcendent as they are in this country without that spirit that drives through the subjugation, the oppression, the injustice. It's something of the divine. I truly believe this. For me, Bass Reeves exemplifies that, and that's why he's a hero.
Do you find that different in Great Britain as opposed to America?
It is different because Great Britain did a very good job, in my opinion, of marketing itself as a place that oppression wasn't as present. Great Britain did a lot of its oppressing on other borders, and that's because it's such a small island. But at one point, 3/4 of the globe was colonized by Great Britain. I would argue that is as evil, if not more so, than what America did to both Native Americans, Mexicans, and black people. But because in America, slavery is an indisputable fact, you cannot escape the reality of that. I think you can't when we ask for monuments to come down, when we ask for segregation to be ended, when we say there need to be reparations, it's because there are very clear indicators of the injustice that happened on these shores. We don't have those markers to the same degree in the UK. I'm of Nigerian descent. You know, the colonization of Nigeria has Nigeria still dealing with the issues that brought about, but UK can be like, oh, we just came in and made things better, and then you guys made it worse. You know, that's literally how they feel. Slavery became, or colonization just got converted to the Commonwealth. No, I'm sorry. It's still wrong. And so, I'm sure this is a bigger answer than you were asking for. But so I would say it is different, but the spirit behind the desire to destroy, I would say, is the same.
Let's talk about the fun part. You loved Westerns. I'm old. I grew up with Westerns, Gunsmoke. Then came along the Westerns after they stopped making all those great Westerns, and you had like Silverado, Open Range. Let's face it, and I once asked Denzel Washington this when he was doing the Western. Isn't it just fun to strap on the 6-shooter, get on the horse? And as Denzel said to me, and you look off into the middle distance a lot. Isn't it just fun to do that?
Yeah, as I said, as a kid, I wanted to be a cowboy. There is something about a man and a horse and the desire to go and get justice and, you know, the open range and all of that. But, you know, there is also a reason why, and Denzel is an example of this, there's a reason why the fact that 1 in 3 cowboys was black has been kept from us.
I didn't know that. I did not know that until I was 45 or something.
Yeah. In fact, the phrase cowboy only exists because of black people.
You mean because of the boy?
Yeah. It was a racial epithet. Yeah, they used to be called cowpunchers. But because it was a way to denigrate the sheer amount of black cowpunchers there were, it became cowboy.
Huh.
And so, again, history that we don't know, history that is kept from us, because anything aspirational, anything where there is a position of power, a supremacist mindset will look to hide that. So this is stuff we should be learning about in history classes. This is stuff that, you know, because you're talking about the people who built this nation. That's actually what we're talking about.
Built the capital.
Yeah, and so doubly so it's fun, because when you do the research and you go, oh my gosh, my people created this, and I was constantly watching it through a different lens. I mean, the common wisdom is that the Lone Ranger was based on Bass Reeves.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know anything.
I'm gonna take care of it.
Thank you.
So that, and of course, you know, you're doing the writing, you're doing the shooting, all of that. But the fact that it's rooted in a historical context that gives people a fresh lens and an appropriate lens on the history and the genre is the really fun part.
Now, how many episodes are we looking at here?
8 episodes.
8 episodes. And you're working on a new project now, but you didn't mention to me what it was. Are you keeping that quiet?
Oh, no, not at all.
Share.
I'll brag away.
Force yourself.
No, I'm about to start a show called Government Cheese, which is a half-hour comedy that we're doing on Apple. And again, you know, one of the remits I've set for myself is the contextualization of Black life on planet Earth. So I tend to gravitate towards pieces that are gonna color outside of the lines of how you've seen Black people. So That show is set in the late 60s, in the Valley in LA, a place that you don't associate black people being.
Were there any?
Oh yeah, there were.
Oh, good.
Exactly. See,
Hear it.
I'm gonna help you again.
Thank you.
And so we're doing a show. It's entertaining. You know, my thing is the fresh and the familiar. You know, give me something fresh in a genre that I know I enjoy. So that's a comedy, but you're gonna see black people in a different way.
Now,
than
you're
you have
producing
before.
it. Are you in it?
I have. Yeah. I'm producing.
But are you in it?
I am in that as well. Yeah.
Of course you are.
I have 4 kids. They're very hungry, and I need to feed them.
Well, that's a good point, because producing, if you are successful at it, opens up doors for more things, doesn't it? There are many people who can be successful for a period of time as an actor, and then you don't hear about them for a while. Sometimes they even disappear. But if you are on the producing side, and you're successful at it, you can keep choosing to do things and even cast yourself.
Yeah, to be honest, if you are an actor, if you are a creative, in the current marketplace, I think it's incredibly difficult, as a black person especially, to not produce. And the reason I say that is because if you're waiting around for other people to make the things that you want to be in, there is still such a narrow view of who we are. And so you will end up playing the best friend, or being on the periphery, or being an addendum to...
Or being the savior.
Oh, well, that tends to be white people who are the saviors.
No, let's disagree on that, because it seems to me there's a long tradition of having the white people who are the focus of the film, and they run into trouble, and then there's a black savior.
Oh no, you're referring to the magical Negro. That's a different trope. We don't get to be called black saviors. No, that's the magical Negro.
Well, I wasn't going to do that.
No. Yeah, leave that alone. Let me do that. But these are genuine tropes, and it's not to, people. Work is work. These are SAG members here, and I have played roles earlier in my career that are not the zenith of what I hope to do, and I've learned from doing them, and those are good things to do. But I think to keep the conversation moving forward, there is a fight. There is a fight to center different people. When I first got the script for Selma, Lyndon Johnson was the lead of the film. Dr. King was a peripheral character on the film. Yeah. And all the producers involved were white men who had their point of view being projected onto... I like white people, by the way. I'm married to one, so let's just be clear. This is not me. This is not me saying...
That's good. I'm white.
Yeah, I noticed. But my point is that I think we all operate from a place of bias. And what diversity and inclusion actually means is you need more people of different sorts in the room to be able to apply their own bias. No one is going to blame you for doing that because you see the world through your own lens. But if all the decision makers are white guys, that ends up being what ends up on the screen. So literally on Selma, we went from white male director to white male director to black male director to Ava DuVernay. And in the different iterations of that film, you literally saw the script change to their perspective of what the story should be about. So it remained Lyndon Johnson as the focus with Stephen Frears and Paul Haggis. Then Spike Lee came on board, and then after that it was Lee Daniels. You saw that project spin over to being more focused on Martin Luther King, and then by the time it was Ava, you saw all the women of the movement rise up in the script. And that really shows you how perspective matters. And if you are going to be able to apply your perspective to a project, you have to be in a leadership capacity. So I didn't realize that for me, I brought Ava onto Selma. I brought Oprah onto Selma as well. I didn't know what I was doing was producing. I was just trying to find a way to get that film made. And I learned on the job, so to speak. And then once I had done that out of necessity, I realized, as you said, as you gain in power, as you gain in notoriety, the best use of that is to now have other people rise up alongside you. So one of the things that I'm most proud of with Bass Reeves is giving the opportunity to young Black actors who almost never get the opportunity to be in a show like this because it kind of doesn't exist. There's a reason why we tend to only see people like Denzel or Don Cheadle or Jeffrey Wright or Morgan Freeman or Sam Jackson later in their careers.
Right.
They're in the theater in their 20s because no one is giving them the opportunities, the likes of which Lauren E. Banks got in this, or Demi Singleton, or Lonnie Chavis, or Justin Hurt Dunkley, who you'll see in this, or Tosin Moronfula, all great actors, Yale trained, Juilliard trained, NYU trained actors who are giving great performances in this. And that to me is the thing I'm most proud of, because that's the thing that rarely happens.
Let's expand it a little bit. This year has been cited as an extraordinary year because, well, we passed the pandemic. We had Oppenheimer, that phenomenon. Some people came back to the theaters for things like Killers of the Flower Moon and what have you. Give me a feeling of your estimation of the state of the movie going at this point.
I think it's great that people are back in movie theaters. That, of course, is a huge thing. But I'm going to be more pessimistic than you on this.
Okay.
Because we see these pendulum swings. Selma started a movement called Oscar So White because there were no Black people nominated in that year, and then for 2 years in a row. And then we had some improvements there. And then we had the murder of George Floyd, which subjected the world, the culture, to a reset. But there are very real pendulum swings the other way right now. And we are going to see the byproducts of that in the coming years, whereby promises that were made, policies that were made in the light of George Floyd's murder either haven't been, the promise hasn't.
You're talking about in the greater society in this case.
I'm talking about the greater society, but also in the film industry, and the film and television industry. I mean, I'm sure people have seen Issa Rae's recent comments about a lot of Black shows being cancelled. You have a lot of Black executives being fired. You have a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives being stopped, and because the desire for change is not skin deep, surface. So
It is skin deep.
Oh, yes, sorry. I mean, what I should say is, what should I mean? Bone deep, heart deep, deep. Yeah. It's not foundational, I guess is what I should say. It's more surface. It's more let's placate people in order that we can just keep this thing moving. And you people have gotten comfortable again. And what I think is the big issue is if you have a Moonlight, or you have a Denzel, or you have something to point at, where you go, oh, we tick the box, that is the problem. We're not looking to be a token. We're looking to be part of the fabric. We are part of the fabric. Black culture drives the culture. And so to constantly be celebrated for overperforming, which is another weird phrase that gets used when something does well. One of the things I'm most proud of with Bass Reeves is in the 8 years of trying to get it made, the notion was that, and the reason why we weren't getting the green light was it's too niche, it's
It's what? Too niche.
Too niche. So
Too much control.
it's a small audience. The Western genre is dying. Basically, it's not global. And so it not being global means that it only deserves a certain level of budget, which is way smaller than it would get if it were global, which is, basically translated as white. And so this show has gone on to be the most watched show globally on Paramount in the last 12 months. Which is an amazing thing for any show to achieve, but a show that literally, that was the thing that you're using an excuse not to make it. But the thing I don't want is for this to become a unicorn, for it to be like, oh, remember when they did that? Oh, remember Black Panther? Oh, remember? No, this is the norm, you guys. This is what will happen again and again if you do this right with the right people and you give it the right support. So yes, my friend Coleman Domingo is nominated this year, and Jeffrey Wright is nominated this year, and Danielle Brooks and Divine Joy Randolph. Great, but that should be the norm. In the same way that if a woman is nominated for Best Director, it shouldn't be news every year. That's like they are literally half the population of the planet. That should be the norm. There should be 2 to 3 women directors nominated every single year. And so that to me is why I just don't rest on those laurels. I don't trust it. I'm just gonna keep on going until it becomes normalized.
And we're going to be ending this in 5 minutes, I've just been told. So let's see, what would be a good way to close this out? How has the reception been? You're doing this in 15 cities, right? Basically.
I've been moving around a bit.
Moving around a bit. What kind of reactions when you chat with people, not with people like me, film craft is what I'm interested in, that's what we've always talked about. But when they talk to you about their feelings about it, maybe how it affects them, what do you learn?
Well, the thing one of the things I'm most proud of is I wanted to make a show that wasn't just for lovers of the Western. I hoped that because we centered the show on a family and on the challenge that is the work-life balance, or if you have a job that takes you away all the time and you love your wife and you love your kids, and the tension is constantly trying to get back to your family, hopefully that's something that is relatable to anyone and everyone, as opposed to just people who, and the people who love Gunsmoke and Have Gun Will Travel, and they love the show as well. But we wanted to center it on a Black family, make that feel universal and relatable, and for that to be the thing that drives a global audience. And the fact that that's what people have commented on the most is one of the things I'm most proud of. And the fact that it has 3 generations in a family watching the same show. Like it starts with the dad brings his dad, so the grandfather's in there, and then the kids join, and then they're all watching it together. That to me is also something that is really, really incredible. And the fact that Black people who haven't seen this representation within a genre they love traditionally. So many Black people love Westerns, but they've either not seen this or didn't know this guy, and certainly haven't been able to see it at this production value. I mean, this show was made for well over $100 million. That's not an everyday occurrence, for a show like this. And so, many things I'm proud of, and many things that the audience have also been happy to see.
Well, now he's going to be joining any of you who just go out the door. You know how to get to the City Winery. If you go take the elevator all the way down, you go out that side door, you look to your right, there's City Winery. You go out the main thing all the way out the other time, you look to your left, there's City Winery. And he's going to be joining you there, brave man that he is. You mentioned getting back to your family. My wife had an operation recently, so I will not be joining you there. But the star here and the producer and the power that is David Oyelowo.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.